Academy Election 2020 Townhall meeting debate between Team Trump and Team Biden. My name is Jennifer Katz, and alongside me is Ike Cruz, who will be the moderators for today's debate.
There will be 9 issues discussed today: the coronavirus pandemic, the economy and healthcare, racial justice, women's rights, immigration, gun violence, foreign policy, climate change, and presidential character. Students from all grades have submitted questions, which Jennifer and I will ask of the candidates.
Before we start, Ike and I urge our student audience to listen attentively and respectfully to both sides. Too often, our political debate is about gotcha moments and the demonization of political opponents. Too often, we do not make the effort to understand the other side's point of view. We should listen today with the desire to be informed rather than merely to be confirmed in our views. This is not easy, but we should try. We now begin with opening statements. I call upon Shira Cohen of Team Trump to be followed by Claudia Towell of Team Biden. Shira Cohen.
As we've seen throughout President Trump's 4 successful years in the White House, he has truly kept his promise to make America great again. He has strengthened our economy, our borders, our security, our foreign policy. President Trump has created an America where millions of jobs are continuously created, where 82% of middle-class families are provided with tax relief, where Hispanic, Asian, and African-American unemployment rates have all reached record lows, where the economic empowerment of women at home and across the globe is prioritized, where carbon emissions have been at their lowest since 1993, where our border is secure, where our army is modernized and equipped to defend the American people and our allies, where there is peace with the UAE, where there is fair and equal trade for all Americans. President Trump's America is truly the best America. To break it down, though, with regard to the economy and jobs, the theme that informs President Trump's presidency is free enterprise, privileging initiative, fixing the broken regulatory system, enhancing American productivity, unleashing American potential. President Trump, unlike Biden and the Democrats, has faith in the American people. With regard to immigration, President Trump understands the importance of securing our borders. He has protected the American homeland by enforcing immigration laws so every American can feel safe in their community, so every American citizen does not have to worry about being undercut by the mass of undocumented aliens. President Trump cares deeply about American workers. Furthermore, with respect to foreign policy, the theme for Donald Trump is clear-cut: America first, meaning the United States cannot sacrifice their interests to the world, whether it be for NATO or for trade. President Trump is all about reasserting American sovereignty and the right of all nations to determine their own futures, with a focus on ensuring security and prosperity. Perhaps the president's greatest achievement has been to apply common sense to the false nostrums by our grand strategists. It took someone like Donald Trump to recognize communist China as the threat it really is. President Trump stood up for the American people, and that is what America truly needs. When listening to the debates, I encourage all of you to commend the Vice President Biden's record. We must ask ourselves, what has he done in his 47 years in Washington? What impact has he left? What promises has he made to the American people, and has he kept them? I would like to leave you all on this note, as President Trump points out. In the end, you're measured not by how much you undertake, but by what you finally accomplish. President Trump may not be a typical president, but he gets the job done. 4 more years of President Trump is what America truly needs, and I encourage all of you to support him.
In 1980, when Ronald Reagan was running for president, he asked the American people the following: "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" 40 years later, it remains a good question to ask on the eve of Election Day. Do we feel safer and more secure in 2020? Team Biden will show that the president's colossal failure to deal with coronavirus led to too many Americans dying needlessly. We are certainly not safer and more secure. Are we a nation that is more united today than we were 4 years ago? The answer is no. Team Biden will argue that many of you will agree with us that we are far more polarized, mainly because of the president's divisive and inflammatory rhetoric and actions. How does one explain a president who, in the aftermath of a failed attempt by an extremist militia group to capture and execute the Democratic governor of Michigan, the president at a rally encourages his supporters to lock her up? Or in the first debate, instead of repudiating the white supremacist group, tells them to, quote, "stand back and stand by." Really? As the journalist Savannah Guthrie told the president, "You are not someone's crazy uncle. You are the president of the United States." Supporters of the president rightly call attention to his moving of the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem and his recent deal between Israel and the UAE, as if his advocacy on behalf of Israel excuses everything else. It does not. Team Biden, of course, also believes that Israel is of great address global warming. The president unilaterally pulled the U.S. out of the agreement and then offered no meaningful alternative to address this crucial issue. That is not leadership. That's abdication. As Rebecca Nissan will explain later, a Biden presidency will be informed not by climate denialism, but what the leading scientists of the world are telling us today. We are running out of time and we must act now. Sadly, climate change is not the only example where the president has dismissed scientists. Dr. Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, was ridiculed by the president last week. We will hear more from Jared Sofia on this topic, but one thing is clear. Dr. Fauci insisted that wearing masks were essential. Dr. Fauci emphasized the importance of social distancing. Dr. Fauci talked about the importance of avoiding potentially super spreader events. The president has ignored and continues to ignore this advice. In conclusion, we need a president who knows what he is doing both at home and abroad. Urgently, we need a president who will unite, not divide. Donald Trump promised to make America great again. Team Biden believes that we were already great and we will be great again, but only after we elect Joe Biden.
The most dominant issue of 2020 has been the coronavirus, where over 220,000 Americans have died and 8 million have been infected. Aaron Berger is representing Team Trump on this issue. Aaron, critics of the president point to the relatively low rates of deaths and cases per capita in countries such as Canada, South Korea, and Germany, and state that the Trump administration has failed to keep Americans safe. Please limit your response to no more than 3 minutes.
Thank you. President Trump has stopped at nothing to keep the United States safe and has done an exceptional job. Everyone seems to be focused on confirmed cases and deaths, but there are other statistics that need to be considered which show how we have been successful in fighting this virus. Look at the case fatality rate, for example. At a rate of 2.7%, the proportion of people who have died from the virus to those who have been diagnosed with it is much lower than other countries. This means that the Trump administration has prevented many patients from being killed by the deadly virus. Contrast our success with that of the countries that you cited. Canada has a case fatality rate of 5.1%, and Germany has one of 2.8%. The context of all this matters. When we're looking at the high number of cases in the U.S., we must take into account the significant amount of testing that the Trump administration has provided. Compared to Canada, the U.S. provides almost double the amount of tests. And those countries that were supposedly doing better than us, like Israel and Italy, well, now they are experiencing massive surges and a second wave. Trump responded effectively to the coronavirus early on. In January, it was the president who immediately cut off all travel to China and enhanced airport screening to prevent the spread of the virus into our country. When the virus did unfortunately begin to spread into the country, Trump managed to build the world's leading testing system. By June, we had conducted an incredible 65 million tests, more than any country in the world. Trump has been strictly enforcing CDC guidelines to slow the spread of the virus, instructing the American people to wash hands, wear masks when in public, social distance, and restrict large gatherings. To make sure that every state had the necessary resources to fight the virus, Trump led the largest mobilization of public and private sector resources since World War II. Billions of PPE were delivered. Over 20 million swabs and tubes of transport media were developed, and 100,000 ventilators were produced to make sure that any patient who needed one would receive it. Trump has massively increased the availability of laboratory and testing supplies through the use of the Defense Production Act, as well as public-private partnerships. We are now closer than ever to the final stage of a vaccine development, thanks to the President's Operation Warp Speed, the effort to create a vaccine in record time. The President understood that the coronavirus was not merely a health issue. American workers and their families needed help. Trump supported the Paycheck Protection Program, which helped save 51 million American jobs. Trump provided direct payments to struggling Americans during the pandemic, tax relief, unemployment benefits, student debt relief, and prevented Americans from losing their homes due to eviction or foreclosure. This relief package totaled more than $2 trillion going to American families and small businesses. The CARES Act will provide billions of dollars to health providers, life-saving capabilities, and to the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Disaster Relief Fund. As Trump gave these crucial financial resources to Americans and flattened the curve through his effective response to the pandemic, he helped states safely reopen and made sure they had the necessary supplies and guidelines to prevent another shutdown. The President has responded effectively, helping to save lives and keep our economy going. Vice President Biden and his supporters have criticized the president, but the truth is that the Biden campaign was saying the same things as Trump in the early days of the virus, and there is no evidence that a Biden administration would have done a better job.
Jeremy Sophia will be speaking for Team Biden on the issue of coronavirus. Jeremy. Senior Josh Shamla watched the first debate between Vice President Biden and President Trump, and noted that Biden claimed that Trump had no plans for combating the coronavirus. Josh wants to know, what will Biden plan on doing to combat the coronavirus, and why does he think it will be a success? Like Aaron, Jeremy, please limit your speech to no more than 3 minutes.
Thank you. My friend Aaron said something in his speech that was just demonstrably false. He stated that the president had been strictly enforcing CDC guidelines to slow the spread of the virus, instructing people to wear masks in public and social distance. I would ask everyone watching, go to Google. Start with the recent rallies that President Trump has held. Was anyone wearing masks? Was anyone social distancing? Even at the presidential debate that was at the Cleveland Medical Clinic, the president's family refused to wear masks, even asked after they were requested to do so. Recall that during the debate, the president mocked Vice President Biden for always wearing a mask. Last but not least, the White House has even experienced a super spreader event during the nomination of Justice Coney Barrett. Take a look at the pictures. Trump and his supporters were not wearing masks, and they were not social distancing. So this notion that Trump has been an advocate for CDC prevention guidelines is simply inaccurate. Even Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's leading infectious disease specialist, point blank said that he was not surprised when the president and members of his administration had contracted the virus. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was asked why he had not been to the White House since early August, and he answered bluntly, "It is not safe there." This is a president who at every step of the way, instead of modeling responsible behavior that may have contained the spread of the virus, he has served as an example of what not to do. As a matter of policy, this president has rejected efforts at the local and national level to impose mask mandates and contact tracing. The president's leading advisor on the coronavirus, Dr. Scott Atlas, who has no formal training in infectious diseases, stated that masks are ineffective. Meanwhile, the CDC has found that wearing masks can save up to 130,000 lives. Aaron stated that a Joe Biden presidency would not have done any better. This is simply not true because we know that Biden, unlike Trump, has already called for mask mandates, a policy that has saved lives in other countries, and unlike the president, Biden consistently wears a mask. We also know that Biden would support contact tracing. In short, we know that a Biden presidency would follow the best practices of countries like South Korea and would be guided by the science, not magical thinking. Over 220,000 Americans have already died of the coronavirus under the president's watch. There's one simple reason why so many other countries have lower rates of infections and lower mortality rates than the US, and that is a failure of leadership. Don't let Aaron fool you with a collection of misleading claims. Any president who is competent would have already employed the Defense Authorization Act, which the president delayed doing so. Meanwhile, the president's alleged efforts on behalf of American workers and families was the result of Democratic leadership in Congress, not his. Furthermore, any responsible president would have at least studied the previous administration's prepared playbook for dealing with a pandemic. Instead, this president, who was so intent on overturning anything with Barack Obama's name on it, just threw it away. And now, of course, he continues to want to eliminate the Affordable Care Act that provides insurance for millions of Americans. That's right. In a time of a pandemic, the president's Department of Justice is trying to eliminate a health program that millions of Americans rely upon. Has President Trump even offered a meaningful alternative? The answer is no. 4 years ago, the president took an oath of office to protect and defend the people of the United States. On the issue of the coronavirus, the most important issue facing his presidency, he has failed.
On to the economy and healthcare. This is for Gilad Azarian. Team Biden, Rose Saad, one of the bigger asked, if Biden raises the rate of business tax, won't that make it more expensive for businesses to conduct business in America?
Rose, I appreciate your question. There is an assumption that tax cuts are a cure-all, and that any tax increase, no matter how surgical or strategic, is hurtful to the economy. I want you to keep this in mind. President Bill Clinton increased taxes for corporations to 35% in the 1990s, much higher than what Joe Biden is now proposing, and the economy experienced a 4% annual growth rate in GDP.
The reason Vice President Biden supports tax increases for corporations and for the top 1% of the income bracket is that we need revenue if we're going to be able to pay for the necessary investments in infrastructure, and as Rebecca will later state, starting to build a green economy that will reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. These investments will create jobs and lead to economic growth, but we have to be honest. The money needs to come from somewhere. With all due respect to my friends defending the president, you can't both promise tax cuts and increase spending for infrastructure and other important government programs like the military. I mean, you can, but I think that is the definition of voodoo economics. The Biden plan will both bring about economic growth and reduce the deficit that has increased under Trump. Analysis done of the Biden economic plan by Moody's, a nonpartisan Wall Street research firm, found that the Biden plan would produce more economic growth with Trump than the Trump economic plan, and will do so by reducing the deficit by more than 6%. When he ran for presidency, Donald Trump promised his tax cuts would lead to economic growth. He promised rates of 4% annually. In reality, in the first years of his presidency, we saw a modest growth, a 2.6% annual increase in GDP, hardly the greatest economy in American history. The president promised that he would rebuild America with an ambitious infrastructure plan. But the reality is that we've yet to see those new buildings, bridges, and roads. President Trump's tax cuts not only failed to deliver the economic growth that was promised, they also led to a significant increase in the deficit, from 4.4% to 6.3% in GDP. That was before the coronavirus. Put it another way, while the president personally owes $400 million to his creditors, he also added $2 trillion of debt to which we, the taxpayers, will one day have to pay the bill. Vice President Biden has a proven record of bringing about economic recovery. The 2008 recession was the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Our financial system was in shambles. Biden was responsible for implementing the economic recovery plan. When he took office, the rate of unemployment was 10%. When he left, it was 4%. Here is an inconvenient fact for defenders of Trump. The last 3 years of the Obama-Biden administration saw the deficit go down, while 1.6 million more jobs were created than in the first 3 years of Trump's presidency. The claim that Trump has created the greatest economy on earth is simply fiction.
Well, the fact is that the American people cannot trust Vice President Biden to follow through on his promises, especially when it comes to business policy. All it takes to know this is a quick look at recent history. Over the course of the presidential race, Joe has stated on several occasions that he plans to repeal the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which would effectively raise taxes on small businesses immensely by raising marginal tax rates as well as eliminating the current 20% small business deduction. Furthermore, his proposed tax increase from 21 to 28% would also hit many businesses hard, both small and big, and it will also directly cause utility bills to rise in all 50 states. And yet, let's not forget that just back in February of this year, this gentleman, when asked about his policies for small businesses, had the audacity to state, quote, "No, taxes on small businesses will not go up." While that's dubious in and of itself, one can look back even further for proof of Vice President Biden's flip-flops on business policy. When he ran for vice president back in 2008, he repeatedly said that he would not support any form of any tax that imposed even, quote, one single penny of tax increases on any American making less than $250,000. But as we all know, Biden shattered that promise upon taking office. Even the New York Times, an overwhelmingly left-leaning newspaper, has recently admitted that small businesses will, quote, pay more under a Biden administration. Furthermore, contrary to what Gilad may say, the fact is that the U.S. economy has seen much growth under the Trump administration via tax cuts and additional spending, both of which significantly increased federal budget deficits. He's also brought unemployment to all-time lows, and even with the virus still affecting jobs, the president is working day and night to ensure a smooth economic recovery. Biden may try and take credit for the economic recovery and state that Trump is just riding on the coattails of the Obama-Biden administration's economic success. But Americans clearly aren't buying that, and it shows. After all, it's no surprise that the president's approval ratings among small business owners have hit highs of over 60%, as opposed to the 40 to 50% approval ratings during the Obama administration. Put simply, if you're a small business owner, then make no mistake, because Vice President Biden is coming for you hard.
Tamir. Benjamin Pinkasov, an 11th grader, wants to know, what is Trump's plan for health care if his administration succeeds in overturning the Affordable Care Act and a lawsuit now before the Supreme Court? Many critics of the president ask these two related questions. First, how will Trump protect those people who have pre-existing conditions? And second, how will he lower drug prices?
Well, Jennifer, that's a great question. And let me begin by establishing, or rather repeating the fact that Obamacare was an all-around terrible program passed by the Obama-Biden administration in 2010, and the American people know it. As a result of the act, health insurance costs have been rising steadily in the past few years. Entitlement spending has been rising, Medicaid enrollment is exploding, and Americans simply are paying more money for less health coverage. Luckily, President Trump had the sensibility to cancel what was arguably the worst part of Obamacare, the individual mandate, and to expand more affordable options outside of the individual market. But the fight is far from over. The Trump administration hopes to succeed in overturning the act completely, and we understand the concerns of the American people. The President has already issued an executive order saying that it is, quote, the policy of the United States to ensure that Americans with pre-existing conditions can obtain the insurance of their choice at affordable rates. And while this may not hold any legal force by itself, the President plans to propose a more specific plan that will do so. On the subject of drug prices, it's simple. The President will remove barriers to entry into free markets for drug providers that offer safe, reliable, and cheaper drugs. Joe Biden, on the other hand, is winning the race for donations from Big Pharma, but experts and industry stakeholders doubt his plans will successfully lower drug prices or even address underlying issues in the industry.
Eli, Rachel Pinkasov, a senior, asked why is Vice President proposing a public option to the Affordable Care Act? What would the public option do that Medicaid does not?
Thank you, Rachel, for your question. First, I'd like to take time to explain what is the Affordable Care Act and why the American people love it. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, was passed in 2010 and granted health care access to 20 million uninsured Americans. It did this by the following steps: expanding Medicaid eligibility, creating health insurance exchanges, allowing children to remain on their parents' health care plans until 26, and most importantly, preventing insurance companies from denying patients with pre-existing conditions, pre-existing medical conditions, health care. Health costs are the number one reason people go bankrupt. With Obamacare, many Americans gained access to insurance and avoided this harsh fate. Joe Biden worked with Barack Obama to pass the Affordable Care Act, and although Trump would like to get rid of it, it's very popular. Picture this: you are someone with, God forbid, diabetes, asthma, or even had cancer. These are all examples of pre-existing conditions. Before the Affordable Care Act, you could be denied the right to health insurance, even if you had the money to pay for it. This is just one of the ways the Affordable Care Act changed millions of Americans' lives for the better. In regard to what is the public option, and what it does that Medicaid does not, a public health option will create a government-run health insurance agency while leaving intact private insurance companies. This would create competition and lower the prices of healthcare premiums with a cheaper substitution available. There's a fundamental difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Trump thinks everything can be solved by private agencies. Biden is not a socialist. He understands that private agencies are needed, but he also believes that the government should intervene and help those who can't afford it. The public option does just that. It allows those who no longer wish to pay their high premiums for private insurance to opt into public health insurance. Many will choose to continue their use of private insurance that is very expensive, but those who wish will be able to use the public insurance at little or no cost. So the question, what would it do that Medicaid does not? Medicaid is a joint state and federal program that provides health care coverage to 72.5 million Americans. The type of people who qualify for Medicaid varies by state, but usually Medicaid covers low-income people, the elderly, and people with disabilities. The public option, in comparison, would allow anyone who needs insurance the option to gain access to it through a public option, not only to qualify for Medicaid through your state requirements. This would be especially crucial today, as millions of Americans suffered substantial monetary losses due to COVID. For struggling families, the public option and the Affordable Care Act could save them tens of thousands of dollars a year and allow them access to quality health care.
The year 2020 has also included the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, a black woman and black man killed by police officers in the cities of Louisville and Minneapolis. Following their deaths, there have been increased demands for police reform and wider demands to address alleged systemic racism in America. Meanwhile, critics of the president have claimed that he is a racist who engages in dog whistle politics. Moshe Hammerman, a ninth grader, asks of Team Trump, what would the president do to discourage white supremacists and advocate for true equality? Emily Akimian of Team Trump, you have 2 minutes to answer.
Thank you, Ivy. President Trump has repeatedly denounced white supremacy. On August 14, 2017, President Trump said, KKK, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. He repeated similar statements throughout his presidency, which the media does not properly cover. Regarding the issue of police brutality, President Trump condemned the actions of police officer Derek Chauvin in response to George Floyd's tragic death. Beyond these important gestures, President Trump is taking action on police reform, including the signing of an executive order to create a national police misconduct database. President Trump believes that Black Americans deserve equal opportunities. President Trump believes that Black children should have access to good schools. He's an advocate for school choice, by which Democrats generally oppose. Guess who else supports school choice? Black Americans. According to a recent poll, 67% of African Americans support school choice. Contrary to the narrative that our POTUS is racist, Black unemployment prior to COVID-19 was at a record low. The civil rights movement of our time is criminal justice reform. Tragically, millions of Americans, disproportionately Black Americans, had families destroyed by long prison sentences. In 1993, then-Senator Joe Biden famously proclaimed, "Every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill, had the name of the Democratic Senator, Joe Biden." In 2018, President Trump signed into law the First Step Act, which reforms federal prisons and sentencing laws to decrease the federal inmate population. Ironically, one of President Trump's greatest accomplishments is helping to undo the damage that Joe Biden inflicted upon Black communities. This administration has brought jobs and investments to inner cities through opportunity zones. These tax incentives encourage businesses to bring jobs to neglected neighborhoods. In addition, under the Trump administration, federal funding for historically Black colleges has increased by more than $100 million over the last 2 years, a 17% increase since 2017.
12th grader Polly Zarzeski asked of Team Biden, if Biden were president, how would he handle the whole situation with police brutality and people wanting to defund the police? Gilad, you have 2 minutes to answer.
Holly, this is an excellent question. The past few months, we've seen massive protests to the horrific police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Ladies and gentlemen, while Trump has stood by and continued to divide our country, Joe Biden created a plan to address the outcries of the nation. Biden supports police doing their jobs to reduce crimes. However, he will not stand by and continue to allow the police to use excessive force when not appropriate. Biden has supported new legislation proposed by Democrats that calls for a federal ban on police use of chokeholds, requiring racial and religious bias training for officers, and creating a national database of officers who use excessive force. These will all be pushed for by Biden in addition to his main plan, to reform the police by funding the Community-Oriented Policing Services, or COPS program. The plan calls for police to wear body cameras and all police departments to adopt a federal use of force standard. It also requires the departments hire officers that mirror the racial diversity of the community they serve. In support for community policing, Biden recently said, quote, "I've long been a firm believer in the power of community policing, getting cops out of their cruisers and building relationships with the people and communities they are there to serve and protect." This is exactly what our country needs right now. We need to bring back the personal relationships and trust between police officers and the communities they serve. There needs to be mutual respect. Citizens need to feel that the police will protect them and not target anyone based on solely race. And citizens need to respect the police to allow them to do their jobs. To enforce these new standards, those departments that do not adopt the needed reforms for a community-based model will not receive any federal funding, which they need to operate. In regards to will Joe Biden defund the police, he will not, and he has stated this explicitly and repeatedly. In a direct quote from Joe Biden himself, he said, quote, "No, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet basic standards of decency and honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in the community." Despite many people calling for defunding the police, Biden does not believe this will help minorities that are suffering from police brutality. Biden's plan is one of the most comprehensive plans we have ever seen to reform police brutality in America. At the same time, Joe Biden will not defund the police, and we will continue to have law and order with Joe Biden as our president.
A follow-up for Gil on this issue. Many students, including Raymond Mazur of the 10th grade, want to know, is Joe Biden in favor of the Black Lives Matter movement? And if so, what about the fact that some groups are using the issue of racial justice to engage in looting and other criminal behavior? What will Biden do to restore peace and civility, law and order to our country? Gilad, please limit your answer to a minute and a half.
Thank you, Raymond, for your question. To answer it simply, Joe Biden is absolutely in favor of Black Lives Matter. Unlike Trump, Biden is actually able to acknowledge that we have a problem with systemic racism in our country. One of Biden's main plans to help disadvantage Blacks and Latinos is his Build Black Better policy, that pushes for helping these individuals through a greater inclusion in the economy. The plan is centered around supporting Black-owned businesses through many different means, specifically by increasing the number of federal contracts between Black-owned businesses and the government. Biden stated at the Democratic National Convention, "Will we be the generation that finally wipes out the stain of racism from our national character?" I believe we're up to it. I believe we're ready. Trump, meanwhile, has wholly disregarded how his strategy and policies don't help Black communities, from his rhetoric that sows division to his inaction in addressing the coronavirus pandemic that has killed nearly 1 in 1,000 Black people in the United States. In regards to the riots in our country the past year, Biden is absolutely against the fact that some groups have hijacked the racial justice issue as an excuse to engage in looting. He has clearly stated that these people are not fighting for the cause, just criminals taking advantage of the chaos. Biden supports protests that peacefully call to change the problems that plague our country. As far as what Biden will do to restore peace and civility, Biden will work to restore the people's trust in law enforcement while letting law enforcement do their jobs. Many people, after the recent police killings of African Americans, fear the police. They have been on the streets protesting for months now. Joe Biden will address the obvious issue we are facing while allowing the police to do their jobs, while Trump inflames the people and divides us with his racist rhetoric. For example, he did not denounce white supremacy in the first presidential debate. Biden will work with the people to produce reform and allow them to feel safe again.
Emily, you have a minute to respond.
Thank you. President Trump wants American cities, including inner cities, to be safe. He also does not support the preposterous and absurd idea of defunding the police, which Democrat officials across the country have been pushing for. Guess who else doesn't want police departments defunded? Black Americans. According to a Gallup survey this summer, only 22% of Black Americans were in favor of defunding the police movement. We need more funding, not less funding for police departments, so they can be better prepared to deal with the challenges that they face. Funding should go towards better training and community outreach. We could all acknowledge that Black lives do matter. Unfortunately, the movement has been hijacked in large part by Antifa and other radical left groups. While President Trump has repeatedly denounced white supremacists, Joe Biden refuses to condemn Antifa, an anarchist group destroying Black communities. These people are destroying Black small businesses and damaging property. Why doesn't Joe Biden condemn these radicals? Joe Biden is 78 years old and has spent a lifetime in politics. Why is he only now changing his stance on criminal justice reform? He was senator for 36 years and vice president for 8 years. The 1994 crime bill was passed 26 years ago. Why is he waiting until now to correct its obvious flaws? When it is time to govern, Joe Biden is like so many other career politicians. All talk and no action.
Turning to women's rights. This is for Chloe Nassar of Team Trump. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died at the end of September, creating an opening on the Supreme Court. While she was on the court, Justice Ginsburg was an advocate for women's right to choose. She supported upholding the 1973 case of Roe v. Wade that provided for a constitutional right of women to have an abortion. Why did Donald Trump choose a justice to replace her, Amy Coney Barrett, who had not only written that Roe was wrongly decided, but also signed her name to advertisements alleging that abortion is immoral?
Thank you, Jennifer. It's telling that you refer to late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg as an advocate for women's right to choose while on the Supreme Court. Justice Ginsburg has made great strides for women, but no justice should be a judicial activist. The justices appointed to the highest court of the land are not simply another legislative body. They're meant to interpret the Constitution as it's written and ensure that it is upheld. Justice Amy Coney Barrett is originalist, meaning she considers the Constitution's author's intent and its immediate historical context when interpreting its guarantees in light of a particular case. To quote Barrett herself, "I interpret the Constitution as a law, and then I interpret its text as text, and I understand it to have the meaning that it had at the time that it was ratified. So that meaning doesn't change over time, and it's not up to me to update it or infuse my own policy views." Barrett's pro-life views did not mean that she'll overturn Roe v. Wade and presented the opportunity. Barrett told the audience in a 2016 speech at Jackson University's Public Policy Institute, "We should be putting people in the court that share our policy purposes. We should be putting people in the court who want to apply the Constitution." Aside from her originalist approach, Barrett has also made clear that she'll not overrule precedent. During the 2017 confirmation hearings before Barrett's confirmation as a circuit judge of the 7th Circuit, Senator Dianne Feinstein asked Barrett whether she'll follow Roe v. Wade as a super precedent. Barrett answered, "I have committed to confirm to unflinchingly follow all Supreme Court precedent." When Feinstein pressed further, Barrett explained, "Roe has been affirmed many times and survived many challenges, and it's more than 40 years old, and it's clearly binding on all courts of appeals. So it's not open to me or up to me, and I have no interest in, as a Court of Appeals judge, challenging that precedent. It would bind." She asserted that it's never appropriate for a judge to impose that judge's personal convictions, whether derived from faith or anywhere else other than the law. Moreover, she stressed that my personal church affiliation or my religious belief would not bear the discharge of my duties as a judge. Barrett herself has made it clear that her personal beliefs do not influence her rulings. Amy Coney Barrett respects precedent.
Talia Dora of Team Biden. Rosa Gergov of the 10th grade asked, should abortion be allowed? Nina Gaitanchi, also of the 10th grade, asked a similar but more pointed question. Does Vice President Biden think a woman should be given the right to abort her child?
Rosa and Nina, thank you for your questions. VP Biden and Justice Amy Coney Barrett are both Roman Catholic. However, unlike Justice Barrett, Biden does not think that the Supreme Court case of Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, nor does he think it should be overturned. Joe Biden does not personally approve of abortions, but realizes that it is inappropriate to impose his morality on others. Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris are fiercely pro-choice. In their view, this complicated and difficult decision should be made by a woman. We need to be clear though, this does not mean that Biden supports abortion on demand or even late-term abortion. It means that in the early stages of a pregnancy, the woman consulting her doctor, family, and ultimately her conscience should make the decision, not Joe Biden and not Justice Barrett. This, by the way, is consistent with the views of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the majority of the American people. Biden, as we all know, has been in public life for a long time. He was elected to the Senate for the first time in 1972, a year before Roe v. Wade was decided. He remembers what pre-Roe v. Wade world was like. Affluent women, if they wanted an abortion, could just go elsewhere and get qualified doctors to perform the procedure. Meanwhile, less prosperous and desperate women were too often left with no choice but to have unsafe and unsanitary procedures. Too many women died this way. Biden understands that we cannot go back to the era of back alley abortions. Protecting women's rights and making sure women are safe has been an important theme throughout Biden's career. As chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he authored the Violence Against Women Act, which was passed with bipartisan support. The law succeeded in reducing domestic violence by 53% from 1993 to 2008 and saved countless of women's lives. The next time someone suggests that Biden has been in public life all these years and accomplished nothing, I would say to tell that to all the women whose lives were saved by the Violence Against Women Act.
A follow-up for both Chloe and Talia. What will your candidates do to advance women's opportunities in the workplace?
Thank you, Jennifer. Despite the media's constant degradation of President Trump, he has an impressive record of accomplishment and is committed to economically empowering women. His Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the elimination of burdens and regulations helped lower the unemployment rate for women to its lowest in 65 years. In fact, women compromised 71% of their increase in employment in 2019. President Trump's fighting for policies that recognize demands faced by working parents so mothers can better provide for their families and thrive in the labor force. His administration worked to double the child tax credit, protect the child dependent care credit, and develop tax credit for employers who offer paid family and medical leave. He's also working to break down the barriers faced by women in STEM fields by expanding apprenticeships and vocational education. President Trump signed the INSPIRE Act, encouraging NASA to have more women and girls pursue careers in aerospace. He directed more than $200 million per year to technology education grants for women in programs that encourage participation in STEM careers. On October 23rd, just a few days ago, President Trump's administration launched the first ever United Nations Call to Action on women's economic empowerment, U.S.-led with the participation of 31 UN member states to advance the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative, which will reach 50 million women in the developing world from 2017 to 2025. President Trump is committed to reaching full and equal participation in the global economy and will continue his initiatives throughout his second term. For the first time in our country's history, women now comprise a majority of the American workforce, contributing to the prosperity of our country's flourishing communities. By investing in women in our country and around the world to advance their opportunities in the workforce and reach their full potential.
Before we even get to policy, I'd like to establish the fact that words matter. Trump, despite his numerous accomplishments, which Chloe mentioned earlier, has consistently continued to demean and degrade women and sends out a message that he does not respect women. Presidents have an impact beyond policy. They should be figures that children should aspire to emulate. Well, why do we punish a child for speaking in a derogatory way towards their female peers if we can't even hold our president to the same standard? Now, to properly address your question, Jennifer, we must return to RBG's accomplishments. In 2008, the Obama-Biden administration's first legislation was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, inspired by RBG's dissent, which promoted fair pay with regards to race, gender, and age. Biden has always understood that we're facing an important issue and has been working to bring us one step closer to equal pay. He plans to do so by investing in small women-owned businesses, expanding access to education and training, and strengthening pay and benefits in careers disproportionately filled by women. Also, Biden will reassemble the White House Council on Women and Girls, originally created by the Obama administration but later disbanded by the Trump administration, He also plans to work with advocates to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, which he co-sponsored, to enshrine gender equality in our Constitution. There is no doubt that Biden will continue to carry out RBG's legacy both as a litigator and a justice, and is the candidate with the best interests of women's rights in mind.
Immigration was one of the signature issues that Donald Trump campaigned on back in 2016. At another outing of Team Trump, the president promised to build a wall between Mexico and the United States, and he promised that Mexico would pay for it. Has the president delivered on his promise?
When President Trump was elected, the United States was in the midst of an immigration crisis. People were entering the country illegally as they pleased, with absolutely no sign of slowing down. One of Trump's many ideas when he entered office was fixing this immigration problem. For some odd apparent reason, many Americans believe that all Trump has to do to fix a problem is snap his fingers. That is not the case. For an idea to pass through Congress, it has to be voted on and passed by a Congress filled with Biden-led Democrats, which are consistently shutting down every attempt Trump makes to fix the immigration problem that is clearly bipartisan due to its harm to every part of America, but for some reason is being ignored by Democrats and is only being acted on by Trump. If Biden is elected, not only will there be no progress on the issue of legal immigration, but the problem will even become stronger as he will look to undo all of Trump's hard work. If something should have been done to prevent this outstanding problem, why hasn't the Biden-included Congress already done it? Let's not forget the bigger picture in that already 371 miles of border wall have indeed been built, with an aim to reach 450 miles by the end of 2020. As a result of giving Jared Kushner the task of getting it done. Kushner was able to bring together Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, White House Counsel Pat Cipollone, former Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan, and Stephen Miller, a senior advisor with a large role in immigration. The five were able to take large steps in getting the wall on track to be built. Trump was also able to collaborate with Mexico to reduce the number of bogus asylum claims which allowed illegals to apply for asylum after they crossed the border. This problem has rendered the border almost useless. As a result, Trump posted thousands of active-duty U.S. military to supervise the building of the wall, which had led to a 90% decrease in illegal immigration attempts. Over the past 8 months, the number of attempts has been consistently dropping. The law is being upheld, and we have Trump to thank. During President Trump's tenure, he was able to pass a number of around 400 executive orders on the issue of immigration, and now our border with Mexico is clearly more secure.
Another question on immigration for Team Trump. Adam. Aaron Bays, a 10th grader, wants to know, why are the children being taken away from their parents at such a young age?
The problem with this question is that when parents get arrested for illegally crossing the border with their children are not stripped from their parents' arms. Instead, they are in fact detained together as a result of an executive order passed by Trump himself. After a 20-day period, if the parent does not receive asylum, the minor is required to be released from custody immediately. Coyotes and drug cartels are smuggling children across the border as well. In 2016, one unnamed coyote admitted that they rely on drug cartels across the border, since drug cartels, quote, control the border. Despite how this problem may appear, this is not a problem caused by Trump. This same question was even asked during the Obama administration. The bigger problem is when Trump attempts to fix this separation problem, he is shut down by the Democrats in Congress. In the view of the Democrats, it is better to let a problem remain for political gain than it is to fix the problem, and we can thank the media for that. President Trump is not opposed to immigration. He's opposed to illegal immigration, as his position is one of upholding the law. And unfortunately, there have indeed been consequences. There were over 1,000 children that were found without parents, but thanks to Trump's efforts, that number was cut in half. Be it true that these parents are the ones that are breaking the law, but the larger story is that as a result of Trump being in power these last 4 years, our border is more secure, the wall is being built, and the law is now being enforced better than ever. We now have better control over the border today than we did 4 years ago, and the wall will continue to be built if Trump is reelected.
Leora Edrich is representing Team Biden on immigration policy. Leora, your response to Adam just said.
One of the themes of President Trump's campaign that we saw in the debate is his habit of telling the American people that he is not your typical politician, and he delivers on his pledges. Trump's promise to build a wall has not been fulfilled. When he was in office, he said at every one of his rallies, "We're going to build the wall and it will be paid for by Mexico." The president said that he had reached an understanding with Mexico, but hasn't told the people that Congress debate over funding to build a wall along the Mexican border led to an unnecessary government shutdown from December 22, 2018 to January 25, 2019, which was detrimental to the U.S. immigration court system. By mid-June 2019, the number of pending immigration court cases exceeded 900,000. Has the president delivered on his promises? What Trump has built is only a small fraction. Adams stated that Trump has built 371 miles of the wall, but what he didn't mention is that the border is 2,000 miles long. The answer is no, the wall was not built. Trump has waged an unrelenting assault on our values and our history as a nation of immigrants. He has allowed the use of family separation as a weapon against desperate mothers, fathers, and children who are seeking safety and a better life. He has started massive raids that would break up families who have been in this country for years and targets people at sensitive locations like hospitals and schools. The Trump administration has stopped allowing catch and release, which is an immigration policy that allows migrant families apprehended at the border to enter the United States. Instead, asylum-seeking immigrants will be sent back to Mexico and wait for court dates in the U.S. to pursue their claims for protection. While there was a humanitarian disaster in Syria, Trump cut U.S. refugee admissions drastically. Antony Blinken, Biden's top foreign policy advisor, said a Biden administration would prioritize sending aid to Syrians in Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, while also leading by example in reviving America's own resettlement program. You're right, Donald Trump is not your average president, but definitely not in a good way. He constantly makes extravagant promises without actually delivering. He's making things worse.
Viewer Jacob Markov, a 12th grader, asks, does Joe Biden believe that illegal immigration should be decriminalized?
Joe Biden does not believe illegal immigration should be decriminalized. It would be an invitation to a new surge of illegal immigration from across the world. He believes in proper immigration, but it should reflect our highest values as a nation. Biden believes in strong border security. However, that does not mean a wall. His immigration plan contains steps to improve our border control. According to him, with better training and oversight, it is possible to improve how the Immigration and Customs Enforcement carries out border control. Biden also intends to bring the number of raids on workplaces and sensitive locations down. Furthermore, Biden understands that we are a country of immigrants. We have over 11 million immigrants who have been here for over a decade and pay taxes, and the great majority of these individuals are law-abiding and hard-working. He would like for these 11 million immigrants to have a pathway to citizenship. One issue that Joe Biden is passionate about is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA, the dreamers, the young individuals like you and I who grew up in this country. The Obama-Biden administration created DACA in 2012 to protect these dreamers. The current president would like to have them all deported. Biden understands that these people are hardworking individuals and many would be willing to serve in the military. Instead of deporting them, we can take them out of the shadows and put them on the pathway to citizenship. Biden will ensure they are eligible for federal student loans and are included in his proposals to provide access to community college without debt. He will also increase government resources for asylum seekers and expand the network of sources to help them. It reflects Vice President Biden's character in contrast to President Trump's.
On February 14, 2018, a gunman opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. 17 students and faculty members were killed. Unfortunately, what happened in Parkland was not an isolated incident. Other schools and other communities have experienced similar tragedies. Every day, more than 100 Americans are killed with guns, and 200 more are shot and wounded. Over 37,000 Americans will die this year because of gun-related violence. 9th grader Matt Schlomo asked both candidates, what can elected officials do to limit gun violence? And 10th grader Samantha Carmelli asked a related question, is there a need for stricter gun control laws right now? Aviel Zarishadai will have 2 minutes to answer on behalf of Team Trump, and Talia Jor of Team Biden will also have 2 minutes to answer to this question.
The Second Amendment states a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Donald Trump believes in this amendment, but at the same time, he also understands the importance of making sure that it is the correct people who have the ability to get firearms. In order to prevent school shootings, the most effective way to protect the students is to arm faculty at the schools. By doing this, the staff of the schools are not only able to protect the students, but they are also able to deter attacks because of their ability to fight back. If there are strict gun control laws, the only people that will be affected are the law-abiding citizens. However, if gun control laws are too lenient, anyone will be able to get a gun. So President Trump is in favor of having background checks to allow those who are qualified to own guns instead of those who are not. Additionally, President Trump also wants states to adopt red flag laws, so courts can take away guns from potentially dangerous people. The Second Amendment must be respected, and President Trump understands that. Because of that, he's hesitant to ban citizens from getting assault rifles. Trump understands that the Second Amendment is meant to protect citizens from a government that does not respect their rights. The Founding Fathers added this amendment because they had just fought a war to get away from a government that took advantage of its power and took away the citizens' rights. In contrast to this, Vice President Biden and the Democratic Party want to ban assault rifles and institute a buyback program that will only take away guns from citizens who follow and respect the law. This will leave the United States citizens unable to defend themselves from not only dangerous criminals, but also from the government itself. The Second Amendment is very clear that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and President Trump understands and respects this constitutional right, while at the same time striving to lower gun violence and school shootings, not by giving guns to those who will abuse them, but to those who will directly use them to protect themselves and others.
The U.S. accounts for just 4% of the world's population, but 35% of global firearm suicides. Americans are 35 times more likely to be killed in a gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. We've seen mass shootings per year go up from 5.1% under the Obama administration to 7.9% under Trump's. And why have we not seen any meaningful gun reform over the last 4 years? Because organizations like the NRA have backed the president and other Republican campaigns to keep their profits up. Following last year's shooting in Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, President Trump was open to consider reforming gun control laws like ending the gun show loophole. After speaking to the president of the NRA, Trump reverted his comments. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said it best. These retreats from President Trump are not only disappointing, but also heartbreaking, particularly for the families of victims of gun violence. After the Democratic Party took control of the House of Representatives following the 2018 midterm election, they introduced legislation to expand background checks and more tightly regulate gun sales and transfers. The Trump administration threatened to veto the measures if the legislation came to the president's desk. Not only has President Trump refused to sign new legislation, he has also been repealing regulations regarding people with mental illness from purchasing firearms from the Obama-Biden administration. Instead, President Trump has spewed ludicrous ideas like having school teachers keep firearms in their classrooms to prevent school shootings. This would not only be ineffective, but it would put more children in danger. Unlike President Trump, Joe Biden knows how to make progress on reducing gun violence using executive action. After the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012, President Obama tasked Vice President Biden with developing both legislative proposals and executive actions to make our communities safer. As a result of this effort, the Obama-Biden administration took more than 24 actions, including narrowing the so-called gun show loophole, increasing the number of records in the background check system, and expanding further funding for mental health services. Joe Biden has taken the NRA twice on the national stage and has won both times. In 1993, as a senator, Biden helped pass the federal background checks law, which has since kept more than 3 million firearms out of dangerous hands, and the law still stands today. Additionally, the 1994 crime bill, Vice President Biden helped write a 10-year assault weapon ban. Joe Biden does respect the Second Amendment, but technology since the times of our founding father has advanced, and there must be meaningful change to gun laws in order to protect American lives. Under a Biden presidency, there will be a complete ban on assault weapons, universal background checks, and the development of smart weapons that will only allow the owner of a weapon to use the firearm. This will also incentivize states to adopt red flag laws, which allow courts to confiscate guns from people deemed a risk to themselves and others.
An issue that many young people care about is climate change and the future of our planet. Last year, Time magazine named Greta Thunberg a Swedish teenager Person of the Year because of her ability to inspire a movement of over 1 million young people demanding that world leaders respond to this crisis. Senior Devere Paz has this question for Noah Son and Clara Team-Trump. With 97% of scientists saying that climate change is caused by human greenhouse gases and that there has been more natural disasters than ever before, why doesn't President Trump believe this?
Thank you for the question. As I think everyone knows, climate change has been a big factor in this upcoming election. During the presidential debate, President Trump did state that climate change is, to an extent, being impacted by carbon emissions. However, if it is the sole reason, then why was there not an uproar about the environment when Joe Biden was vice president? After all, there is actually less carbon being polluted right now than there was under the Obama-Biden administration. In 2015, Joe Biden's last year of vice presidency, the U.S. polluted 5,263 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. In contrast, last year under President Trump, the U.S. only emitted 5,130, the lowest it has been since 1993. You didn't see anyone protest on the streets about the carbon emission when Joe Biden was vice president, Why? Because the issue has turned from the issue itself into a political agenda. The fact that Joe Biden or Barack Obama were never accused of causing climate change when under them, the US polluted more than they are now, proves that. So, we shouldn't destroy our economy by banning the use of fossil fuels and implementing other horrible, horrible laws in favor of a Green New Deal. Virtually the same Green New Deal that will cost tens of trillions of dollars. The same Green New Deal that Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris endorsed. Instead, we should adopt more environmental and economic-friendly responses, which the President has already been doing. Resolutions such as the Save Our Seas Act, which reauthorized the NOAA Marine Debris Program and promotes international action to reduce marine debris, or how we signed the largest public lands legislation in over a decade, designated 1.3 million acres of wilderness. Now, with regard to the claim that there have been more natural disasters than ever before, the answer is quite simple. There hasn't been. According to the National Oceanic Administration, and as Mike Pence said in the vice presidential debate, there is actually not more hurricanes happening now than there were 100 years ago. So, instead of bankrupting our economy, which Joe Biden would like to do, we should have economic and environmental friendly responses, which have proven to work. Please vote for Trump.
Rebecca, there's been a lot of talk about the Green New Deal. 3 related questions. First, what is the Green New Deal? Second, does Vice President Biden support it? And third, if not, what is he going to do about climate change?
Allow me to respond to the statements made by my opponent. NOAA has stated that there are no more natural disasters today than in the past, but that information is incredibly misleading. The reality of the problem is that the storms that we have today are much more destructive and severe than the ones that we've had in the past. What NOAA has neglected to tell you is that due to rising sea levels, scientists predict that many coastal cities, which yes, includes New York City and Long Island, will be underwater by the year 2050. Also, NOAA has stated that carbon emissions have gone down during the Trump administration. But again, that information is extremely misleading. What he didn't tell you is that 90% of the reductions in carbon emissions took place during the Obama administration. President Trump wants to undo all of the progress made by President Obama, and yet he benefits from the regulations made during this time. President Trump also claims that he wants America to have clean air and water, but his actions speak much louder than his words. President Trump has repealed 70 laws that protect clean air, water, and wildlife. He has defunded the Environmental Protection Agency, and he has pulled out of the groundbreaking Paris Climate Agreement. Once again, the president has deceived and lied to the American people. NOAA has also stated that the Green New Deal, which is not even the plan that Vice President Biden plans to enact, will destroy our economy. This is simply not true. The Biden plan will create thousands of high-paying jobs in the clean energy sector. The real threat to the American economy lies in the effects of climate change. Massive hurricanes and storms have destroyed American lives, homes, and businesses. Now, I would like to note the fact that NOAA has never adequately responded to the question that was asked of him. Instead, he gave an ambiguous answer that has no scientific backing. With the vast majority of the scientific community in consensus, how can the President of the United States refer to climate change as a hoax made up by the Chinese? How can we stand by a president who does not even have a comprehensive plan to fight the biggest existential threat to our generation? Unlike President Trump, who has consistently downplayed the legitimacy of science and facts, Vice President Biden has long appreciated the enormity of climate change. In 1986, he introduced one of the first ever climate bills in Congress. He was a key champion for the Forest Conservation Act of 1998. He oversaw the Recovery Act, the largest single investment in clean energy in the U.S. history, and he rallied the world to achieve the groundbreaking Paris Accords. It is because of this that Vice President Biden has been called a climate change pioneer. To answer your first question, the Green New Deal was a resolution put in Congress by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others to respond to the threat of climate change. Vice President Biden has indicated that while he shares the goal of significantly reducing America's carbon emissions, we have to do so in a way that is more pragmatic. So, that brings us to your third question. What is the Biden plan? The first step is to ensure that the U.S. achieves a 100% clean energy system and reaches net zero carbon emissions no later than the year 2050. Secondly, Biden will rally the rest of the world to meet this threat. Climate change is a global issue that requires decisive action from every country around the world. He will recommit the United States to the Paris Climate Agreement and lead an effort to get every major country to increase the emission of their domestic climate targets. If you value the air you breathe, the water you drink, and the land you stand on, Vice President Biden is the only viable option. We must take extreme action to solve this problem before our time runs out, because unfortunately, there is no planet B.
On to foreign policy. Emily Kagan of the 10th grade asks of both sides, does her candidate believe that the Accords of the United States brokered between the United Arab Emirates and Israel will pave the way to a lasting peace in the Middle East? If so, why? Aaron Hahn of Team Trump and Sam Kroll of Team Biden will be given 2.5 minutes to answer.
Thank you, Emily, for that great question. Yes, I strongly believe that the historic peace deals between the United Arab Emirates and Israel will pave the way to a long-lasting peace in the Middle East. The United States of America's President Donald John Trump has long been known to get deals done. Whether it be real estate deals, economic deals, or peace deals, President Trump has the record to prove it. This September, as many of you all know, President Trump, along with a successful administration, brokered a peace deal between the United Arab Emirates and the State of Israel. In this peace deal, Israel agreed to immediately end its plans to annex parts of the West Bank, and in exchange, the UAE agreed to begin normal relations with Israel. This historic peace deal is one of many in which Trump successfully made happen. President Trump has also been able to achieve a notable peace deal between Serbia and Kosovo, and ease relations between North and South Korea. It's no wonder the president was nominated for a staggering 4 Nobel Peace Prizes. Trump's peace deal with the United Arab Emirates is the beginning to a lasting peace between the Arab world, the Palestinians, and Israel. After the UAE agreed to sign a never-foreseen peace deal with Israel, the nation of Bahrain followed along with Sudan. This depicts the start of a pattern of Arab countries beginning to normalize ties with Israel. Although as of now only 2 notable Arab countries signed peace deals with Israel, many more are to come. Arab countries see themselves needing to sign peace deals with Israel for key reasons. These reasons may range from fighting common enemies like Iran or fighting the China virus. In Trump's next term as president, maybe we will see countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, or many more make peace with our greatest ally, Israel. Now, I would like to ask you, the people watching, the following question. Do you believe the Biden administration would be able to sign historic peace deals in a very complicated Middle East? Well, based on Biden's record as Senator of Delaware and Vice President under the disastrous Obama administration, the answer is clearly no. To start, Biden as a senator voted for the Iraq War, sending many troops to their deaths with little to no progress in what seems to be a never-ending war. As senator, he also threatened to cut off aid from our ally Israel. To make things worse, under the Obama-Biden administration, millions of dollars were given to the Palestinian Authority, which went into supporting terror. Furthermore, I would like to notify all of you watching, if you are not aware, that Obama and Biden believe that in order for Israel to achieve peace with its Arab neighbors, it first had to achieve peace with the Palestinians. President Trump proved that to be wrong. And lastly, Biden and Obama agreed to and promoted the Iran nuclear deal, allowing Iran to develop nuclear weapons. Unlike Joe Biden, who agreed to the Iran nuclear deal, sending troops to their deaths and devaluing our relationship with Israel, President Trump has done the exact opposite. Apart from creating peace in the Middle East, Trump has removed troops from Iraq, gotten rid of the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, and ended the policy of giving money to the PA. The list can go on, but my time is short. This is the most important election in the history of our country, and your vote in keeping America great couldn't be more important.
Thank you, Ike. First off, I would like to point out that Joe Biden has supported the efforts of Trump regarding the peace deal between the UAE and Israel. Furthermore, as Vice President, as Senator, and the Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Biden has had a record of being pro-Israel since the 1970s. Biden helped shape the unprecedented $38 billion 10-year memorandum of understanding between Israel and the UAE signed in 2016, the largest such military aid package in U.S. history. In a school where the love and concern for our brothers in Israel is a fundamental teaching, it should be noted that the security of Israel will be a priority to Joe Biden. But besides peace in the Middle East, the president is responsible for so much more, and that is where Trump just is not a good president. America should exercise leadership in matters. Pulling out of agreements such as the Paris Agreement is only one example where the president has dropped the ball. Furthermore, if the coronavirus is such a threat right now, why is Trump pulling out of international health coalitions? Joe Biden believes that foreign policy and domestic policy are deeply connected. The job of foreign policy is to advance our security, prosperity, and democratic values, but it seems that President Trump undermines our democratic values while embracing dictators. Whether it is pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal or hosting talks with North Korea, President Trump has opened up the possibility for either nation to unleash nuclear weapons onto the world. Under the Trump administration, the United States is currently less respected than that of China and as respected as Russia. One can only imagine another 4 years of Trump and what it would take to rebuild America's status in the world. Under Joe Biden, there would be no embracing of dictators. Joe Biden has a record of securing alliances with other nations that is essential to America's security. These alliances are meant to strengthen us. But Trump's policy of America First, however, is isolating America and making it much harder to encourage other countries to respond to threats to our common well-being. There have been many treaties that President Trump has pulled out of that have been detrimental to the U.S.'s well-being in the future. The Paris Agreement, signed to prevent global warming and reduce climate change risks. President Trump pulled out of this, and because of it, in 2030, our greenhouse gas emissions level will be 3% higher than if we stayed in it. So ask yourself, would you rather a president who not only recognizes climate change, but thinks that it is an impending threat that must be responded to immediately, or a president who not only denies climate change, but will make the United States a contributing factor to the climate changing? In addition, President Trump has discussed pulling out of NATO. This is the oldest standing alliance formed to safeguard the Allies' freedom and security by military and political means. To pull out of NATO, we would be handing Russia a massive victory. And this goes back to a point made by Claudia in her opening remarks and by myself earlier. Donald Trump undermines our democratic values and embraces dictators, men such as Vladimir Putin, the same man who paid bounties to the Taliban to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan. Now I ask you all, not as students of the North Shore Hebrew Academy, but as citizens of this great nation, would you rather a president who undermines our democratic values, or a president who will focus on the well-being of our country and help once again make the United States a beacon of democracy that other nations want to emulate? Thank you.
We finished today's town hall debate with the topic of presidential character. 10th grader Talia Weinbach asked, what do you think is the most important characteristic of a president?
Presidential character starts with delivering on one's promises, staying true to one's word, as President Trump puts it, promises made, promises kept, and he has done exactly that. He promised to increase veterans' health care, which he did. He promised to raise tariffs on goods imported into the U.S., which he did. He promised to take no salary, which he did. He promised to renegotiate NAFTA, which he did. He promised to create a private White House veterans hotline, which he did. He promised to move the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which he did. He promised to reverse Barack Obama's gun executive order, which he did. He promised to limit legal immigration, which he did. The list goes on, but I think I've made my point. Now it's important that we take a look at Biden's record. In his 47 years in Washington, what promises has he made? What change, if any, has he brought about to the American people? These are questions I asked when opening the debate, which I'll answer now. Biden promised to create an economy that worked for middle-class Americans. He never did. Instead, Biden's left-wing policies led to the worst economic recovery since the Great Depression. Biden promised to lower health care and prescription drug costs. He never did. Biden voted for NAFTA, killing American jobs, then he promised to renegotiate it. He never did. Biden promised to secure our borders. Instead, illegal immigration spiked on his watch. Now, Biden's track record of broken promises doesn't bode well for the new promises he's making to the American people. For example, Biden claims he won't raise taxes, but in reality, Biden's radical plan amounts to a massive $4 trillion tax hike on American families. Biden claims he'll create jobs, but in reality, Biden's extreme Green New Deal would ban fracking, kill energy infrastructure projects, and eliminate American oil and gas production, killing millions of American good-paying jobs. Biden has also claimed to be running to ease the racial divisions of our time, pledging to recover the soul of America from polarizing Trump era. But the truth is, Biden himself is the problem, making racist and inappropriate remarks. I'm sure you're all familiar with his following statement. If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or for Trump, then you ain't black, which he said in May of this year. Recent news. Or when he said poor kids are just as bright as white kids, which again was said only a year ago. Recent news. Or as he said about former President Trump in 2007. I mean about the first mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean that's a storybook man. The list goes on and a simple Google search will suffice. But this should simply speak for itself. Anyway, to get back to my point, we see a clear pattern here. President Trump keeps his word, Vice President Biden does not. President Trump will continue to make America strong again, to make America great again, to make America safe again, as he's done incredibly well these past 4 years. President Trump is the winning ticket in this election, and I encourage all of you to support him. President Trump is what America truly needs.
Before I address the question about presidential character, I think it is important that I respond to what we just heard from my friend Shira. Shira provided you with a, quote, list of promises made, promises delivered by the president. But it is telling what she did not include. The president, when he announced his candidacy, promised that he would build a wall that would cover the entire 2,000-mile border with Mexico, and that Mexico would pay for it. Well, as we learned today, the president has come nowhere close to delivering on that promise. The president promised that he would repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, and that he would offer a, quote, beautiful plan to protect the millions of people who have pre-existing conditions. He has been president for 4 years, and the American people have never seen this promised plan. No previous president or presidential candidate has failed to release his tax returns. Joe Biden has released his returns for the past 22 years. The president promised to do so back in 2015, and yet we are still waiting. What we do know from leaked documents is that the president owes over $400 million, and unlike other businessmen, he had to secure that debt personally because he is not viewed by creditors as credit-worthy. Shearer told you that the president delivered for our veterans. What she didn't tell you, and certainly the president has never acknowledged this, was that it was the Obama-Biden administration that put into law the Veterans Access, Choice, and Accountability Act in 2014, not President Trump. The president did sign a Mission Act 4 years later, but as the Washington Post reported, the law that President Trump signed was a mere update to the Obama-Biden law. Sadly, this type of misrepresentation or distortion of facts was not an uncommon occurrence with President Trump. Fact-checkers have found that President Trump has made more than 22,000 false or misleading claims that go beyond mere political exaggeration. A discussion of character should indicate honesty. The president's dishonesty has been a hallmark of his presidency. Shearer told you that the president delivered on a promise to overturn an Obama gun regulation. What she didn't tell you was what exactly the president was overturning. It was a regulation that made it harder for people with mental illness to purchase a gun. No doubt there was one special interest group that applauded the Trump action, the National Rifle Association, which is now spending millions of dollars to get the president reelected. As Talia told you earlier, even when the president expressed a willingness to consider meaningful gun control policies to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people, the president has deferred to the NRA to a special interest and not the public interest. Shearer told you that Joe Biden has been in public office for decades, but that he has accomplished nothing. Well, with all due respect, that is just another Trump talking point, and it is simply incorrect. As Talia Jor told you earlier, it was Joe Biden, when he was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who authored the Violence Against Women's Act. That law succeeded in reducing domestic violence against women by 53%. As Vice President Joe Biden spearheaded the Economic Recovery Act that reduced the unemployment rate from 10 to 4%. As Gilad told you, the Obama-Biden administration created 1.6 million more jobs in the last 3 years of its term than President Trump did in the first 3 years. And yes, health care coverage to 20 million people, the Affordable Care Act, saving thousands of lives. So with all due respect to our Team Trump fans, Joe Biden has a record of helping people, and yes, saving lives. The question was, what is the most important characteristic of a president? That is a tough question. I do think a president should be honest. I do think a president should be trustworthy. I also think a president should show respect for those who disagree with him. Above all, I think that a president must be able to put the interest of the nation over his own personal interest and respect our democratic institutions. In my view, Joe Biden passes that character test, and President Trump does not.
And that finishes our town hall meeting. Jennifer and I would like to thank all students who submitted questions. They were all excellent.
We'd also like to thank debaters for a civilized and respectful debate, and to thank our cameraman and producer, Aaron Root. Students may now go on their computers and vote for the candidates of their choice. Have a great day.
Great job, guys.
Great job,
Thank you,
all of
Mr.
you.
Maroon.
Great job, all of you. Thank you so much.